Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. I'm your host, and today we're going to tackle something absolutely crucial for your CBC board exams, the unification of Germany. I know, looking at your NCERT Class 10 history textbook, it can feel a bit overwhelming, right? All those dates, the different wars, the complicated names. But don't worry, because by the time we wrap up here, you are going to have a perfect, structured mastery of exactly how Germany became a nation. We're going to break down the historical narrative and give you the exact keywords you need to score top marks. So let's get right into it. Okay, let's kick things off with a massive question directly from your textbook. It's the analytical question that frames this whole story. Can the army be the architect of a nation? You see, before the mid-19th century, when most people thought about building a nation, they thought about democracy, right? They pictured citizen revolutions. But Germany's story? It's completely different. It's a story where the military and the monarchy actually took the wheel. So keep this question in the back of your mind as we go, because answering it effectively is exactly what your examiners want to see. So here is our roadmap for that perfect 5-mark essay. First, we'll look at the 1848 Liberal Initiative. Then, how Prussia takes the lead. Next, we meet Bismarck the architect, map out the 3 wars over 7 years, witness the birth of the new German Empire, and finally look at how they modernize the new state. All right, Section 1, the 1848 Liberal Initiative, or as I like to call it, the failed democratic dream. So taking a step back to 1848, nationalist feelings were actually really common among the German middle class. Professionals, businessmen, prosperous artisans, they had this huge, ambitious vision. They even got together in Frankfurt, right inside the Church of St. Paul, and convened a parliament. Their dream was a united German nation, but one that was headed by a monarchy subject to a parliament. Basically, a constitutional monarchy. But, well, that dream completely fell apart. The liberal push for a democracy was totally crushed by the combined conservative forces of the monarchy and the military. When they offered the crown to Friedrich Wilhelm IV, the King of Prussia, on constitutional terms, he flat out said no. He actually joined the other monarchs to oppose the elected assembly. And because this middle-class parliament ignored the demands of workers and artisans, they lost their wider support. Ultimately, troops were called in, and the whole assembly was forced to disband. Now, here's a word you absolutely have to commit to memory for your exam: Junkers. Seriously, defining this is a classic 1-mark board exam question. The Junkers were the large landowners of Prussia. When the monarchy and the military stepped in to repress that liberal 1848 initiative we just talked about, they didn't do it alone. They had the heavy backing of these powerful Junkers. This elite group played a massive role in making sure democracy didn't take root in Germany. Moving on to Section 2, Prussia takes the lead, and the shift to state power. So with the democratic attempt completely shattered, it left a huge vacuum. And Prussia, having this incredibly dominant state and a powerful military, just stepped right in to fill it. After 1848, the whole idea of nationalism in Europe shifted. It moved away from democracy and revolution. Instead, conservatives realized they could use those nationalist feelings for their own goals. And their goal wasn't some free democratic republic. No, they wanted to promote state power and achieve political domination across Europe. And the unification of Germany is literally the prime example of this conservative strategy playing out. Which brings us to Section 3, Bismarck the architect. He is the mastermind behind the whole operation. You simply cannot write an essay on German unification without talking about Chief Minister Otto von Bismarck. He was the true architect here. He orchestrated this entire massive process. But he didn't do it through parliamentary debates or democratic voting. No, he used the sheer might of the Prussian army and the bureaucracy. He famously operated on a policy of blood and iron. He was like a strict taskmaster, using the military to forge a single nation out of dozens of divided states. It was all about power, executed with fierce, ruthless efficiency. All right, Section 4, 3 wars, 7 years, the military path to victory. If your exam asks you to trace the process of unification, this specific detail is your golden ticket. You must memorize this list. It took 3 wars over 7 years, fought against Austria, Denmark, and France, ending in complete Prussian victory. Bismarck deliberately engineered these conflicts between 1864 and 1870. And by defeating these 3 neighboring powers one by one, Prussia proved its absolute military supremacy and effectively locked in the unification process. This relentless campaign led to some massive territorial expansion. Prussia essentially just absorbed other states after these victories. They expanded their borders after the 1866 Austro-Prussian War, and then eventually folded in the southern German states, creating this massive new German empire by 1871. It really was an incredible campaign of expansion through pure military might.
And that leads us to Section 5, the new German Empire, and a bitterly cold morning at Versailles.
The climax of our story happens in January 1871. After defeating France, the Prussians achieved the ultimate symbolic victory right in the heart of French territory. On a freezing cold morning, January 18, 1871, an assembly of German princes, army reps, and important Prussian ministers, including Bismarck, gathered in the unheated Hall of Mirrors in the Palace of Versailles. They were there to crown Kaiser William I of Prussia as the German emperor. Just imagine that for a second. They are standing inside the grand palace of their recently defeated French enemies, officially proclaiming the birth of the German Empire. I mean, talk about a power move. It was just a staggering display of Prussian triumph. So when you're writing this out in your exam, a chronological flow is definitely your best friend. Start with the failed liberal middle-class attempt back in 1848. Then move to that pivotal 7-year period from 1864 to 1870 with the 3 major wars. And finally, cap it all off with that grand conclusion in January 1871 at Versailles. If you follow that exact flow, you'll prove to the grader that you completely master the timeline.
Finally, Section 6, modernizing the new state and establishing Prussian dominance.
Now, if you want full marks on your essay's conclusion, you really need to mention this part. The unification wasn't just about changing the borders on a map. It was about how the state actually functioned every single day. The new state placed a huge emphasis on modernizing its core pillars: currency, banking, legal, and judicial systems. And notice how, in every single one of these areas, the highly efficient Prussian model was adopted. They didn't take a little bit from all the different states to make something new. They essentially just did a massive copy-paste of their own Prussian systems across the entire new empire.
So, Prussia didn't just conquer Germany territorially, they conquered it institutionally. They firmly established their dominance over the entire nation. To be German in this new empire basically meant living under Prussian rules, using Prussian money, and being judged by Prussian legal standards. The conservative, military-backed state totally succeeded in what they set out to do.
So, to wrap things up, remember our opening question? Can the army be the architect of a nation? Well, Germany answered that with a resounding yes. But I want to leave you with this final thought. By proving that blood and iron, military might, and conservative power could triumph over democratic ideals, what kind of massive global conflicts was this military-focused nation about to trigger? As you continue studying history, think about how this newly modernized, militarily dominant empire sitting right in the middle of Europe is going to shape the super turbulent events of the 20th century. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep reviewing these notes, keep your structure tight, and you are going to absolutely ace that board exam.